Welcome once again to another episode of The Credentials. And as you can see, we are at the illustrious GSP Studios. So, this is an episode I am really excited to have because I think, yes, part of this is to expose people to different people's experiences and giving people a different look as to how a journey can be completed, how a journey can be done, and how there is no right or wrong answer to going through this thing called life, because everyone, as you can see, and as you probably know from your experiences, everyone has a different path and a different journey. And the key is learning from people's past, because what happens is, while everyone's journey is separate, there's certain obstacles that we all face, there's certain challenges that we all face, and it's helpful and useful to look to see how others have, handled successfully these challenges, or if they didn't handle it successfully, why was it that they didn't handle, why wasn't it successful, right? What happened that made their approach or the way that they executed overcoming that challenge or that obstacle, what made their attempt not successful? So that way, when we enter or face that road, that challenge, that obstacle, we know what to do, and we also know, more importantly, what not to do. So I say that to say today's episode is focused on disappointment and frustration, and using that to fuel your drive to executing your passion and your purpose. And I think it is the perfect time to have this conversation in the Credential series, because let's just take my life for instance, right? Today is what, January 26, 2021, and a lot of people were hurt, were devastated a year ago, which was a Sunday, when we all found out that Kobe Bryant passed away. And what's crazy is, in a lot of people's reality, including my own, that is a devastating moment. And then the next day is my sister's birthday, January 27th. Just like literally tomorrow is my sister's birthday. Happy birthday, Princess Jit. Happy birthday, right? So that's how complex life is, where we can be in a situation where so many people are grieving, and then the next day somebody's being born, somebody's celebrating another birthday, right? Another trip around the sun, wherever you want to call it. So that ties into this episode, I should say, of not letting disappointment become a distraction, right? When I say disappointment becoming a distraction, I mean in terms of, yeah, this is life, and life is full of obstacles and challenges, like I said to begin with. So there's going to be disappointment throughout parts of your journey in life. The key is in how you continue to elevate and go where you want to go, or when that disappointment happens, how it doesn't linger, is you don't let it distract you from your passion and from your purpose, right? Don't let it get in the way of doing what you want to do or doing what you need to do, right? Don't let what happened yesterday affect the present or the future, right? So, for instance, I could be sad today, however, I'm alive, I have breath, I have all the fortune and blessings relative to my experience. So, and I know, you know, my sister is celebrating a day of celebration. I have a choice. I can live in that past and let it take over my actions and my thoughts and just ruin my day. And, and what happens is when you have that energy and that thought process, that touches everyone. Everyone gets touched by that, not just you, and you don't have to even say anything, or you don't have to necessarily do anything. Just by you radiating it internally, that radiates externally to everyone and touches everyone else. Which is why oftentimes you hear a lot of people say protect your energy, or being in places to protect your energy. What they're saying is, being in places of positivity is going to pour into you, and it can protect your energy by changing your energy, where you have a neutral or negative and you're around so much positive that it switches your negative to a positive. And obviously vice versa can happen. So that's very, very, very important. So I say all that to say, don't let disappointment become a distraction, right? Because disappointment is temporary, and distraction, if you let it, it could be forever. So be mindful, be aware of that. I think that's very important, and that's also just something in my personal life. I've been planning to be a sports agent for the last 7 years. Literally the last 7 years. I've been planning to be a sports agent, and I went through certain qualifications, and I shared my journey in previous episodes. And the year I'm getting ready to announce, my goal and my vision, and start making moves and how I want to move, COVID-19 happens. Right? So COVID-19 happens, and what that does is that delays my journey, me taking the next steps in my career. It delays it for a whole year. And in that moment, which was, the test was supposed to be for last July, and now it's July 2021, right? In that moment, in that space, in that time frame, I could easily let a disappointment become a distraction and say, woe is me, and be mad and be frustrated, and maybe even think about quitting or get discouraged or whatever the case may be. So it's very important for me to know that keep the main thing, and don't let my disappointment and my frustration of not being able to take advantage of my skills and my gifts that I've been honing and crafting, just because I have to wait a year, I can't all of a sudden be reckless and ruin the progress and ruin the progression that I've worked so hard to build and obtain. We don't really realize in our personal lives how sometimes we can be in one situation for too long and let our skills or let our drive or our purpose get pushed to the wayside because we're just focusing on the short term and not planning for the long term. So I think it's just use my story as a way to, you know, give you confidence or give you confirmation that, yeah, you know, every there's just going to be disappointment at the end of the day, you know, and the key is not to turn that disappointment into like I said, a distraction. So one thing I found that was key is realizing that there is something called a competence confidence loop, right? Competence confidence loop. So what that means is, in other words, the more you do something, and the more you do something, more importantly, the more you do something correctly and have success, the more comfortable you become, which makes you confident, which is even further increases the chances of success, right? So a competence confidence loop. So in other words, the more correct reps you do, you're going to see success. And if you see enough success, that's going to translate into moments where you actually implement it in a real life situation. So that is one of the ways you can turn that frustration and disappointment into fuel to driving your purpose. Are you ready for your first commercial break? Now, in continuing with the discussion, the focus is, you know, turning frustration and disappointment into fuel to drive your purpose. So what I did is I read my favorite author's one of his books, Napoleon Hill, How to Own Your Own Mind, right? And I had some key takeaways, and also what I did for this is I also listened and watched a Jim Kwik. It's Kwik, yeah, Kwik. One of his YouTube series talks on motivation and purpose, and I had some key takeaways from both. So I think that's how you legally or ethically give a disclaimer that, you know, or a shout out to their work. So one of the key takeaways, you know, from both of the materials was the difference between passion and purpose, right? So for instance, the credentials, right? The purpose of my life is not the credentials, right? This isn't why I was brought to this earth. At the same time, what it is a passion of mine, right? I have a passion for learning how to become self-aware, you know, learning how to understand myself and how to get the most and how to get the best version of myself. You know, every day I'm trying to figure out ways to make me better, and I know that this credentials, you know, this is a way where I can have other people share how they get better and how they've gotten better. So that's why, you know, starting out, I wanted to set the right tone and the right energy on how I want to impact and be impacted. They had a good saying in here, right? In the fact that I think it was in the I'm looking for it and I can't find it. However, own your own mind, how to own your own mind, what it said was, as people, it's the smart thing, or it's the wise thing to only associate yourself with people that either you can give value to or you can take value from. Right? Everything else is fluff. That's the wise thing to do. Not necessarily it's right or wrong, it's just the wise thing to do, right? So, as people, it's best that we associate or we hang around people that we can give value to or take value from. Figure out what and why you want to do it and keep the main thing the main thing. That's why having to wait a year, to be a licensed agent doesn't take away from my success, because it's in me, and it's something I don't want to do for the next 5 years. It's something I want to do for the next 50 years. So what's 1 year out of 50 years? Right? And that's how, similar to anything in what you want to do or what you're currently doing, if you can't see yourself doing it for 50 years, then there's no way you're going to see the results, and that's why you probably are and probably can't have the ability to turn the frustration and disappointment into fuel. The reason why you can't do it is because you're not motivated to do it, because deep down inside you don't want to do it, right? Money only motivates us so far, and even if you get motivated by the money, if you don't have like I said, the passion and the motive, then your performance is going to suffer, and eventually someone who has that ability to execute with purpose is going to replace you, because as we know, it's a very competitive environment that we live in, especially if you live in a big city, right? It's a very, very competitive environment because there's a lot of talented people everywhere. Another one that I realize is, going back to the last thing, is people do best that which they want to do, right? So I translate that, back to, I talked about previously, Vector and Cutco and knife selling, and even in that lane, I was good, not great at it, because I wasn't into it, right? Going back to passion and purpose, right? That wasn't my purpose. My purpose wasn't to sell knives or anything like that. What it did was, the reason why I had success was because I was passionate about sales and marketing and people and perfecting a skill set, and learning a skill set, honestly. So I was just so passionate about it that I became good at it, because ultimately I knew that this would help me in my 50-year plan, right? I knew that if I did this, this is gonna really set me up for long-term success. And to continue on, another thing that really struck me is the formula of motive plus action plus will equals persistence. So if you have been wondering why you can't stay persistent, which is a synonym in my mind for consistent with something, then this is a good formula for you to remember as to what you can do to help yourself find that persistence within you, or find that consistency within you. Is you do the, once again, motive plus action plus will, right? So motive would be the why or the purpose, right? What is the reason why you want to be persistent or consistent? Then the next is the action, right? What are you going to do, or what do you need to do to be persistent and consistent? And then lastly, the will, right? The will would be the want to, right? Putting yourself in a state of want to. So the next thing I realize is that certain thoughts don't mix, actually. You know, in realizing, for instance, faith and fear, right? If you just try to do it right now, right? Try to envision a thought of fear and faith at once. You can't, right? I mean, I can't. I can, at least, right? Now, try to do something like success and failure, right? Of you failing and then succeeding. Kind of like missing a shot and then making the game winner, right? You can do that, right? So being aware of, sometimes you have to make choices in the thoughts you choose to give the time of your day, right? So when that fear and faith come, right, remember that if you're choosing a fear-based thought, then you're taking away the opportunity to think in a faith-based thought. And if you look at history, or if you have a good history class, you'll realize that people and movements that are based on faith go a lot farther than people and movements that are based on fear. Another one is the key to doing everything is accomplished and experienced through doing. It's the action and it's the choice that determines the outcome. The fact that you're doing it, the action you're making, the choice to do the action, is going to lead to the desired outcome, or to the outcome that you're working towards, right? Because if you're doing, and what's the opposite, right? Not doing. So you're either progressing or regressing, whether we like it or not. Even when you think you're acting neutral, you're actually not acting neutral. You're actually acting negative, because by doing nothing, you're taken away from the opportunity to do something. And if you do something, even if you get, I posted something on Instagram today. I seen my story, and it said doing 20 minutes of something, right? Doing just 20 minutes of something is better than 20 hours of thinking about doing something. So that means even that you getting 1% better is way better than thinking about how you can get 50% better. What that means is, in actuality, you got 0% better because you only thought about getting better. You didn't actually get better. While that 20 minutes, you actually did get better. So that 1% is better than 0%. At least how I do math. Because there's no negative in front of it. So, yeah. That 1% is better than 0. Now, if there was a negative in front of it, think of a different conversation. Like I said, negative thoughts can get spread without speaking or action. Just mere presence radiates towards others. Right? So be mindful of that. Organized thoughts, right? Organized thoughts get achieved through a mastermind alliance. Through defined thoughts, thoughts are formed through habits. So, you got that, right? Right? So if you didn't get that, what that means is your habits, right? So what you do is, or turns into, what you think about doing or not doing. Or what someone makes you do, going back to force in education, forms what you think about or don't think about. Right? And then in order to make your thoughts more efficient or make them better, you need a mastermind alliance. And what that means is you need a solid group of friends or acquaintances, preferably a mixture of both, that, and then obviously preferably also some family members that can form together and give you the information or share the information that you're lacking, right? To give you a better understanding of what you can do, what you could be doing, what you should be doing. Oh, this is a good one, right? Purpose must be expressed through intense action. Education without implementation is wasted knowledge. And I liked this section of Napoleon Hill's novel because it goes back to the 20 minutes versus 20 hours, right? And that's the reason why, for me, the credentials is awesome, because, you know, sometimes the conversations that I have on the credentials with others, or, you know, the conversations where it's just me reflecting and giving my opinion on things that I've read, the reason why I take it so seriously is because, and I like to express it through this credentials, is because I want to share it. I like sharing it, and I like the idea of giving people information. If it's okay to put a lot of gas in the tank, right? You can fuel it all up, but if you don't drive it, then it's all for naught. You know, you can even have the best fuel, but if you're not driving it and you're scared to drive, or, you know, yeah, if you're just scared to drive, because at this point you know how to drive, you have the fuel, and you're just scared to drive, you end up not driving, or you let someone else drive and you just stay in the passenger seat the whole entire time, then you're not giving yourself the best opportunity to maximize on your purpose, right? Because you need intense action, right? Not just action, right? Because action would be passenger side, but you need intense action. So that means you need to get behind the steering wheel, and you need to shift the gears to the point where the wheels start turning, and then you need to use your right foot and press that gas pedal or that pedal, and let that car accelerate. And that's how you get better. And that's how you maximize the chance to elevate your purpose. Desire is emotional in nature, and habits are changeable by nature. Right? So a lot of times when we're in habits and going back to not letting the disappointment turn into a distraction, a lot of times, well, what we don't realize, and I learned through education, through books, is that, and just life experiences, is that we can't remember pain. Actually, our body won't let us remember pain. And I know that by a real example, and the fact that I got colors on my skin, and when I go sometimes to think about, dang, what did that feel like again? Because I remember, one tattoo, I was crying, and like, not like boo-hooing, but I was just silent, but tears were coming down, and I said to myself, can I remember that again? And nothing, to no avail. I couldn't really remember it. So that's important in remembering habits that you feel like you're in a loop where you can't get out, is that you have to be just reminded that a habit is just a series of steps that you've been doing. All you got to do is change the steps. It's just like an algorithm. Alright, habits, because all an algorithm is a series of steps that you do to get a desired result. Habits is the same thing. Habits is a series of actions that you do that produces a result. So be mindful of that. And desire is emotional in nature, right? So that goes back to just remembering that emotions are good, Like I said, use disappointment and frustration as fuel, right? Because that's an emotion. That's not a way of living. That's just a state of thinking or feeling at that time, right? Disappointment and frustration. So use that because that can create desire, good or bad. It's up to you to choose. So choose to use it for good, and use that emotional state to motivate you to do the productive thing, or do the thing that helps you instead of hurts you. Procrastination is driven by not having nothing to obsess over, or nothing that motivates you to organize your thinking. And this was something that caught my eye, because I can honestly think of school and studying for school and studying for the agent test, in terms of when I studied for school, I wouldn't do anything. I really don't remember studying for school like that, because I wasn't interested and I wasn't engaged in classes. I just I had a great ability to be motivated by my mother, and knowing that A's and B's, no C's, and that was just a rule. So I did what I needed to do. Now, when I think about being an agent, right? This is how different it is, right? Let me show you. And if you can't see, then subscribe to my YouTube at GSP Productions, right? And look for the credentials, search the credentials, right? Now, if you can't see, right, just envision college rule, the very thick notebooks, the ones that if you had to write an essay on it, you'd be pissed if you're in high school, or high school, maybe middle school, right? It's not the composition journal, it's the extendo with the folder, right? And the notes are serious, right? And I actually enjoy taking these notes. There was no procrastination at all with taking these notes, right? And I'm showing you that because that leads into why I can turn the frustration and disappointment into fuel, because there is no procrastination, because I am obsessed with becoming an agent and tapping into what I can bring to the table, and I'm excited, and I want to be the most, I like just being prepared and knowledgeable, because that's always a position position of power, so to speak. Oh, this was a bar. Idle minds develop ailing bodies. Another great snippet, right, from How to Own Your Mind by Napoleon Hill, one of the GOAT authors. I highly encourage everyone to check out some of his his triple platinum books. They're triple platinum, because they're and it's crazy because he was an author in like the early 1900s, and the things that he says resonates to 2021 like you wouldn't believe, and it just shows how history, if unchecked, will repeat itself and continue to repeat itself. So one thing he said was, the mind is a fertile garden spot, and that it can grow beautiful gardens or great weeds if not cared for properly. So in other words, your mind is what you make it, right? And we have the choice. We always have the choice to make our mind either, harvest bountiful gardens and vegetables, fruits and vegetables, or we can have it harvest tumbleweeds and rotten seeds for lack of a better item. So there's one more key takeaway that I wanted to share, and it was the difference between those who have success and those who don't have success. And it said in this book that the difference is the ones that often have success actually aren't the most talented, actually aren't the most skilled, and more times than not aren't the most prepared. The reason why they're able to overcome what we assume to be the necessities is because they took the most action, right? They activate their action consciousness better than those that are well prepared and things of that nature. And that struck a chord with me because going back to turning, disappointment into premium fuel, the way I do that is by continuing to take action on improving and getting myself in a position to be even more well situated to where when my name is called, I'm ready to immediately hit the ball running and start creating value immediately, right? And it's similar to, if you see a 4-year basketball player entering the NBA draft. I think of someone looking at last year's draft, Payne Pritchard. He's a guard from Oregon. He was there all 4 years, and his positive attribute for what made him draftable in the first round was the fact that the teams felt they knew they were going to get someone that immediately is ready to contribute, right? And wouldn't have a steep learning curve because their level of productivity and consistency warranted the expectation that they know what to do when ready to do it and are ready to do it, I should say. I want to leave off on that because at the end of the day, all we can do is do or not do. It's up to us. And the more that we do, the better off that we are. So this episode is just geared to, I just wanted to share, that I had a disappointment and it really frustrated me. And sometimes you gotta take a step back and realize that, some things are meant to test how bad you really want it, and this is a test, and I had to realize that, and sometimes it takes reading a book or talking to someone. Either way, use my experience in realizing that disappointment is only a temporary block of future success, and some things are out of your control. I mean, who can predict or no one thought to plan for a pandemic, so now moving forward, now I know sometimes you have to plan for a pandemic and you have to have things already in place so that, going back to what I just said, you can execute and be ready to go like a 4-year starter, right? So action, right? Action leads to overcoming frustration and disappointment. I'm going to continue to study, continue to create different ideas, and continue to, network and do all the things necessary to further build my confidence and competence loop. So thank you once again for tuning in to the credentials. As always, it's a pleasure to share information and experiences that can be used to elevate and execute. And I will leave you with this little quote. It said, or I'll paraphrase a quote that I listened to, I think from Jim Kwik, from one of his YouTube talks, and it said, "A reader lives 1,000 lives, and a non-reader only lives one." Because, as Jim Kwik said, you can download decades of data in days. And I'll end on that. Sizzle and spirit raining down. The art of noise is playing in the background. That's just how I'm feeling. 2021 is that feeling. We gotta make moves. And the first move is healing. Hey. Oh.